June 1945, Bavaria. Private Danny Sullivan was hauling supply crates off the back of a truck. Powdered milk and oversized tins. Bananas, fresh, shipped thousands of miles from Central America. Then he heard something behind him. Turned. A boy stood 10 feet away, maybe 6 years old, skeletal, ribs pressing through a torn shirt, feet bare, face caked in dirt. The child said nothing, just pointed at the banana crate, then at his own mouth. Sullivan looked at the boy, then past him at the street. More children were emerging from the shells of bombed-out buildings, watching, waiting to see what the American would do. 15 kids, maybe more, all of them staring at the food. Sullivan reached into the crate and pulled out a single banana. His sergeant spotted it, walked over, voice low. "Put it back." "Sarge, look at him." "I see him. He's German. We feed our guys, not theirs." Sullivan stared at the banana in his hand, then at the boy. The kid's eyes were fixed on that yellow fruit like it was something sacred. He'd probably never laid eyes on one before, didn't even know what it was, just knew it was food. 20 American soldiers stood around that supply truck, every one of them watching a single private decide whether to hand a starving German child a piece of fruit. The report landed on General Patton's desk by evening. Officers were divided. Some demanded discipline, strict orders, no fraternization, no giving away supplies. Others pushed back. These were children, starving children. Enemy or not, Patton faced a choice: compassion or protocol. Here's what he said. "Before we continue, make sure you subscribe. We tell the stories from World War II that reveal the hardest decisions and the humanity buried beneath them." Sullivan's situation wasn't isolated. It was unfolding across occupied Germany. Everywhere American forces established supply depots, everywhere food materialized, German children materialized with it. They'd been starving for months, some for years. The Nazi government had funneled everything toward military rations. Civilian food networks had disintegrated. Allied bombing had gutted infrastructure, transportation, storage facilities, farms. By the time Germany surrendered in May 1945, millions of German civilians faced starvation. The children bore the worst of it. The American military had policies, clear policies. Fraternization was discouraged. Distributing supplies to German civilians was prohibited. The logic was strategic. Supplies were finite. Priority went to Allied forces first, then displaced persons, then liberated prisoners of war. Not the enemy population. But American soldiers weren't looking at an enemy, they were looking at children. Sullivan's sergeant was Staff Sergeant Robert Mitchell, career military, 15 years in the Army. He'd fought across North Africa, Sicily, France, Germany. He'd seen plenty of dead Germans, killed some himself, lost friends fighting them. But standing in that Bavarian town square, watching a 6-year-old boy stare at a banana, something shifted inside him. He'd reported the incident to his lieutenant, Lieutenant James Parker. Parker pushed it up the chain within hours. It reached division headquarters where Patton was reviewing daily operations. The report was brief. Request for guidance on civilian food distribution. Multiple incidents of soldiers sharing rations with German children. Request clarification of fraternization policy. Patton read it twice. Called his chief of staff, Colonel Richard Hammond. Patton asked. Patton looked at the report again. Patton went quiet. Hammond recognized that silence. The general was thinking, calculating. Not just tactical implications, moral ones. Patton said. Hammond arranged it. Within the hour, Patton was riding toward the town where Sullivan's unit was stationed. He arrived late afternoon. The supply depot fumed with activity, trucks rolling in and out. Soldiers loading, unloading, stacking crates, and at the edge of the square, German children, watching. Patton stepped out of the jeep, walked toward the supply area. Every soldier in sight snapped to attention the moment they saw 4 stars. Patton waved them at ease. "Continue your work." He stood there watching. The children kept their distance, too frightened to come closer but unwilling to leave. Just standing, just staring. Patton counted them. 23, ages somewhere between 4 and 12. All thin, all filthy, all starving. One girl, couldn't have been older than 5, clutched a doll, threadbare, missing an arm. She held it tight against her chest, eyes locked on the soldiers moving food crates. Patton watched her, watched all of them. Then he called Lieutenant Parker over. Parker hesitated. Patton turned back toward the kids, the little girl with her broken doll, the 6-year-old boy who'd pointed at the banana, a cluster of older ones, 10 or 11 maybe, positioned protectively around the smaller children. "Tell me about supplies," Patton said. "What do we have?" "Powdered milk, sir, canned goods, some fresh fruit, bananas mostly shipped up from supply lines, allocated for our troops, field rations, hospital supplies." "Do we have surplus?" Parker thought about it. "We're well stocked, sir. Shipments have been consistent. We're not running short." Patton went quiet, thinking. Then he said something Parker didn't expect. Quote_26 quote. "They found Sullivan, brought him before the general. He was terrified, certain he was about to face a court-martial." Patton looked at him. Sullivan didn't know how to answer. "Sir, he was just a kid. Looked like my little brother back home. I just couldn't stand there and leave him like that." "Your sergeant told you to put it back." "Yes, sir." "But you gave it to him anyway." Sullivan stared at the ground. "Yes, sir." Patton studied him, then looked back at the children. "What happened after you gave it to him?" Sullivan glanced up. "Sir?" "The boy, what did he do?" "He didn't eat it right away, sir. He broke it in half, gave the other piece to a little girl beside him. His sister, I think. Then they ate it, slowly, like they wanted to make it last." Patton's jaw tightened. Not anger, something else entirely. He turned to face the assembled soldiers, officers, NCOs, enlisted men, all watching. He said, "Within minutes, more than 100 American soldiers stood in formation, waiting." Patton positioned himself in front of them. He began. He paused. He looked toward the children, still watching from the edge of the square. Silence from the soldiers. He turned back to his men. His gaze found Staff Sergeant Mitchell. Mitchell nodded. Patton turned to Sullivan. Patton walked to the supply truck, picked up a crate of bananas himself, carried it to where the children stood watching, set it down, stepped back. The children looked at him, uncertain, frightened of the 4-star general towering above them. Patton knelt, brought himself to their eye level. He said in rough German. The little girl clutching the doll moved first. Slow, cautious steps. She picked up a banana, looked at Patton. He nodded. Then the rest came forward, carefully, respectfully, each one taking a single piece of fruit. Some took 2, for a sibling who couldn't walk, for a parent waiting in the ruble. Within minutes, the crate was empty. The children scattered, running back toward bombed-out buildings, toward makeshift shelters, toward whatever wreckage they called home. Patton stood there, watched them disappear. Colonel Hammond had arrived, had witnessed the whole scene. The other commanders won't like this. There'll be complaints about resources, about precedent. "Let them complain," Patton said. "I'll handle it." The order spread fast through Third Army units, through the occupied zones. American soldiers now had permission to do what many had wanted to do all along: feed the children. It wasn't unlimited. Supplies were still rationed. Priorities still existed. But the absolute prohibition was gone, replaced with discretion, with humanity. Over the following weeks, thousands of German children received food from American soldiers. Milk, bananas, chocolate, bread. Small gestures. But to children who had known nothing except hunger, those gestures were everything. Private Sullivan continued his supply duties. And every day the same boy appeared, 6 years old, waiting, hoping. Sullivan began setting aside a banana, a small tin of milk powder. Not every day, but when he could. The boy's name was Franz. Sullivan learned that eventually when Franz's mother came to thank him, broken English, tears running down her face, she didn't justify the war, didn't make excuses, just said thank you for keeping her son alive. Sullivan didn't know what to say, so he just nodded, handed her an extra tin of milk. Years later, 1963, Sullivan received a letter from Germany, from a young man named Franz. He'd emigrated to America, was studying engineering, wanted to meet the soldier who'd given him his first banana, who'd shown him that not all Americans were conquerors, that some were simply good men. They met in Chicago. Franz was 24, healthy, strong. Living a life his mother never believed he'd have, Franz said. Sullivan was embarrassed, Franz said. Sullivan asked about his mother. Franz's face fell. She died in 1951, cancer. But she lived long enough to see Germany rebuild, to see her son grow up. She never forgot you, Franz said. She talked about the American soldier with the banas, said you saved us. Sullivan shook his head. I didn't save anyone, I couldn't stand there and do nothing. Franz smiled. That's exactly what saving someone looks like. Patton's order wasn't popular with everyone. Some officers complained about resource allocation, about dangerous precedents, about being too soft on the enemy. But Patton didn't waver. He'd made his decision, and he stood behind it. In a letter to his wife, written 1 week after the incident, he wrote, I saw children today who reminded me of our grandchildren. Starving, helpless, caught in a war they didn't start. Some say we shouldn't help them, that they're German, that they're the enemy. But I can't see it that way. A hungry child is just a hungry child. And if we have food and we refuse to share it, then we're no better than the regime we just defeated. The policy remained in effect throughout the occupation. German children received food from American forces, not as charity, as humanity. And years later, when those children grew up, many of them remembered the American soldiers who shared their rations, who treated them with dignity, who showed them that even in defeat, there was hope. What would you do if you saw a starving child from a nation you'd just fought a war against? Would you share your food or follow the rules? Let us know in the comments.